Alright, once again we're going to start with a blank canvas. It's okay for us to leave the frame rate at 30 this time. And we are just going to use the bone tool to start to connect shapes together so that we can create kind of a figure that's easily animatable as a whole. So to keep things simple, we'll just make a little dancing shape man with arms and legs that can do what we need him to do. So, to start out with, you have a single layer that you're going to put all of your individual parts of the character onto. So we'll keep it easy by just making our guy have a rectangle body. And we'll add maybe an eye, just so he's interesting. Now you'll remember that when you put shapes on top of each other, they become basically one shape. So if I go in here and I've drawn an eye, and later on I take my selection tool and I want to move things around, there's a hole where that shape used to be. So if you do not want things to cut each other out, make sure that they're not touching or overlapping each other. Then I'm going to use a pen tool to create just an upper arm, draw that out. You could also use the oval tool and just stretch it using the selection tool, where you can flatten things out like we did before with that blob animation. Either way, and then you can overlap your shapes to give him like a thumb or whatever to keep things. There you go. So that'll be his hand. We're keeping it super simple this time. Later on, when you are creating your character, you're going to put a lot of thought into it and make sure it looks great. But for this example, we'll just do it like this. So I've separated the upper arm and the lower arm because of course I want them to be able to bend at the elbow. And then I can grab these by holding down Shift and double clicking on them and just copy and paste them until I have this other side as well. And then as far as the legs go, similar things. We need an upper leg and a lower leg, and we might choose to put a foot on there as well, so that we have that as well. I've just used the selection tool to draw a box select around them so that I can drag them out. Wow, he's looking great already, right? Okay, so one odd thing that the bone tool does is we can only have one anchor point on each shape. So if we want to have additional movement in there, like our bone tool will create a connection from the body here over to the leg, but we can't connect it again at the bottom of the leg. And once we get here to the foot, we would need a handle over here to be able to drag the foot around as well. So we're going to create a few just extra shapes in there, make them a different color so you know what's going on with that. I'm going to draw that out, and instead of just drawing more shapes, I'm going to copy that and paste it so that they all are pretty much seen as the same shape under the library. I'm even going to get rid of the outline, keep it simple. So just grab this, you can hold down Control and drag it over. Oh, sorry. You can hold down Alt and drag it over and create more of them. We'll need several of them, so create some extras. And we're going to put one of them here to act as kind of the hip joint of our guy. And then we will put one at the end of the hands, so we have an extra point on there to control that. One at the end of each foot. And later on we're going to make these invisible, but they will work as handles that allow us to grab on it and adjust things more in a different sort of way. Alright, so once we've got the guy all drawn out like this, we get to start putting him together using this bone tool right here. So with the bone tool, you just pretty much click and drag things in. I'm actually going to put one more dot at the top because I want to be able to turn them around in a different way. So with our symbols here, or with our shapes here, I'm going to select them and give them each names. So we'll go down here to convert to symbol. We need to call this left upper arm, and every single piece has to have its own name to it. We click here, convert to symbol, left lower arm, etc., etc. So go ahead and go through and give names to each of your symbols. As far as the yellow circles, we can just call them, you know, dot or whatever. And for the body and eye, I'm going to select them all as a single thing and convert them all to a single symbol called body. So if you need the eyes to move around separately, you would not want to do that. But for now, we're just going to animate the body. So now we go over here to the bone tool and start to draw out basically a skeleton for this critter. So we'll start at our top handle up here, go down to the shoulder area where I'm going to want the arms to hook in. Then we go from that shoulder area down here where we're going to create a joint for the legs. And just keep clicking and dragging into each of your symbols. It's okay if it's not exactly on, you can adjust where that hits later. And don't forget to include this control dot at the end of that leg. So you're basically telling the computer what relationships each of these shapes have to each other. There we go. And now you'll notice that a new layer has been created for your armature. So we can hide this layer for now. You'll notice something weird happened with this leg down here. When I clicked it, I didn't get the outline and the inner shape, and so it only converted the outline into a symbol. So he's got a transparent calf at the moment. So we could go back and adjust that later, but let's just leave it for now. So using our selection tool, we can now adjust him around, but obviously his limbs are in the wrong place. So let's go in and grab them individually and shift them to where we need them to be. We're going to go to the free transform tool over here, and then we should be able to just grab them and drag each part in where we needed it to be. So we can also adjust where that circle hits, so where it pivots from, and we want to make sure that they line up in a logical sort of way. Like this line goes from the shoulder to a point that's not the elbow, so let's shift that down into the elbow, and this dot we want to have at the very end. Over here, same thing, and just put things where they're supposed to be in order to move in a natural sort of way. I think we will actually move this dot down to here because that's what he's going to pivot around his whole body. So let's just add that there. And down here, get those all where they need to be. So I'm having trouble moving this one because you have to grab it right on the outline since it doesn't have a fill inside. So let's fix this now. I'm going to first go to my eyedropper to make sure I have the right color. We'll select the same color from one of the legs. Then we'll make sure we have our paint bucket tool on. We're going to right click on this and edit the selected shape. And there it is by itself. We can paint it easy peasy. Then when we click back, it's painted. Everything's peachy. So now, with our free transform tool, we should be able to just grab this puppy and drag it up where we need it to be. And adjust everything as necessary. If it was snapping where you don't want it to be, you can also use the arrow keys to shift things around in a more exact sort of way. I want to make sure that all of the pivot points sit where I want them to. And let's have his foot go on this side. So now we've got all of the pieces put together, make sure it's on there pretty. And now the really fun part, we can go to this selection tool, and now we get to use this guy basically like a puppet and can move him around. There are going to be some weird things happening right now, like the arm is not very well connected to the shoulder. It goes all over the place. So we need to put some constraints on some of these joints. So if we get our sub-selection tool, go in here and click on this one, for example, we can say constrain its movement. And you'll see right in here, you get this little angle that shows you how far that joint can move up and down, from negative 45 degrees to positive 45 degrees. And we're just going to actually turn both of those to 0 for this one. And you'll see that that angle disappears. So now if I take my transform tool and I try to move it around, the shoulder stays where the shoulder should be. And one thing you'll notice is that once we've done it to one side, it does it to the other side as well. They're all connected to the same pivot point in the middle there. So if we go down here and we constrain the leg to the same thing, 0 and 0, then we should be good with both legs. And when we go in here and try to move them around, they're locked up in here. We're also getting some weird things happening with like the leg there going in reverse and all over the place. So we can constrain some of those joints so that we don't have those problems anymore either. So we can do something like click on this knee and constrain the rotation. You can use this arrow to the angle in here to kind of check where you're going. So this one's going to be how far it goes out kind of forward, and we don't want the knee to bend in reverse at all. So we'll turn that to 0, and you can see that angle no longer allows it to go forward like that. And on the back we can allow it to bend in somewhat more, like maybe 60. So now that knee will bend in, but it won't bend out anymore. So we still have this leg wobble going on here, and we need to constrain that too while we're at it. So let's just go in here and unenable the rotation so it shouldn't rotate at all. And now our legs will just wiggle like we want them to. Perfect. So the dot that we have on the end of this is so that we have a handle so that we can move the foot up and down as needed. We still need to add a whole lot more controls over this to allow it to move more realistically and not go backwards like that. But I'll let you do that. All you would have to do is like we've been doing, go in and click on the joint and constrain it to how far you want it to be able to actually turn and adjust, and it will lock like that. It automatically locks to 45, so if that's where you want it, then perfect. That's easy. But now we've got these yellow dots all over the place that we need still, but we don't want to see. So what we can do is double click on one of our dots, and it'll bring up the color for it. We can turn it transparent. Turn them all transparent. I'm double clicking to get out of what's called isolation mode, and then double clicking to get back into where we were. So this one right here, somewhere along the way, it cut a hole out of the red rectangle. So instead of turning that transparent, I'm going to make it into the red color. So we'll just double click to make sure we're in regular mode. We'll get the eyedropper, whoop, and we will right click on that symbol and just paint it red and go back. Cool, so now we have our dancy rectangle man who's ready to boogie. So we can just animate him as you normally would animate something. We'll go down to here. We'll add some frames clear over in our timeline so that it's full and we can animate him throughout the whole thing. Yeah, what kind of animation should we do? What kind of moves? We'll go a few frames down and right click and insert pose. So instead of keyframes, now you're working with poses because you've got a whole skeleton going on. And in this pose we want him to, I don't know, straighten his arms out. Maybe he bends his, I didn't do all the skeleton stuff. Maybe we can I don't know, have him kick his leg out. Okay, this is going to be a weird dance. But let's see, he moves from that to that. And then we can go a little farther. We can add another pose. And at this pose, maybe he's brought his leg back down and this leg's kicking out, whatever. So you can do animation of having people talk or walk or do whatever thing. Now that you have a skeleton put all together to make them do it. You can also combine it with frame by frame animation. So if you wanted to, let's just quickly repeat this to make it easy for us. So I'll copy that pose. We'll stick it over there. We'll copy this pose. Stick it there. Stick it there. Stick it there. Just so we have a nice amount to work with. Then we'll copy this pose again. Stick it there. Paste it there. Paste it there. Paste it there. Okay, so we can have our guy just repeat his dance. Okay, nice. And at the same time, we could do frame by frame on it, or whatever. We could do tweens on top of things. So we could add another layer, and on this one, I could animate his mouth by adding a mouth on there. Wank. And go down a little bit farther. Add a keyframe. And adjust his mouth. And just do your other types of animation as well. Then add a shape tween between them. So we have that animation. Then over here, we might want to start shifting to be here. And at this point we could say some funny mouth like that. And shape tween. And shape tween. So, alright, now he's totally boogieing. And he's singing, okay, great. So skeletons are going to help you, or the bone tool, building a skeleton for your folks, are going to help you do a lot of good animation. That's a lot easier once you've taken the work to build a puppet sort of a skeleton. And you can add, of course, separate pieces for the head and the neck and all kinds of things. You can get complicated. You can even have a hat on there that's connected to like an arm that goes backwards and forwards, so then you could just lift it up and have it bounce around or do all kinds of things. So play with this. Learn how to make a good skeleton. When you're ready to make a real character, take your time to create the pieces and make it look really great. You can do it in Illustrator as well if you know that or wanted to do that. And there you go. Have fun.